guys, welcome back, and I've got something special to ring in the new year, my champagne and raspberry trifle. Woo! Yes! Let's get started. Okay, now let's get started on our sponge cake for our champagne raspberry trifle. We are going to be needing 6 large eggs, room temp, very, very important, room temp. And our whites are going into one bowl while the yolks are going into another. This particular sponge, you guys, it's what is called an American sponge cake. So it's kind of like a classic genoise, but it's a little bit easier and not quite as fragile. Now we are going to get our egg whites going. And these are going to be whisked. We're going to do this in the big mixer because they are going to have to whisk for about 7 to 9 minutes. They need to go triple in volume, and we also are going to be adding a half of a cup of monk fruit. I'm not using the granulated sugar, so I'm choosing to use monk fruit because I want my cake base as light and almost white as possible. Of course, we're going to have the yolks in there, so it's going to have that beautiful pale yellow color, but I want to keep it as light as possible. Okay, guys, now our whites are in our bowl. We're going to beat these with the whisk beater until they're foamy. At that time, we're going to add a half of a cup of our monk fruit, 1 tablespoon at a time, until the stiff peaks, until we have the stiff peaks. Okay, now I can show you that. What you're looking for when you get to that place of stiff peaks, you don't want to overbeat it. Okay, so when you get to stiff peaks, then you continue beating until it's increased 3 times in volume. When it's increased 3 times in volume, you're done. Okay? All right, so we're going to get that started, and then we're going to set our yolks aside, and we're going to do our yolks after these whites are ready. Okay. Okay, guys, now this is what you would call soft peaks. We need to go a little bit longer to the stiff peaks, plus we're waiting for that to increase. Remember the 3 times in volume. Check it again. All right, and there's our stiff peaks. When you pull up the beater or the whisk and they hold their shape like that, that is your stiff peak stage. All right, so now we're already at about almost triple our volume. We're going to go a little bit longer. All right, now that is ready. Okay, so now we're going to do our egg yolks. We did our egg whites, they're sitting aside. We're going to do our egg yolks. So in goes our remaining sugar to the egg yolks, and we're going to beat this on high until it's thick and pale yellow. Okay, guys, and that is what we want right there. Look at that beautiful pale yellow, thick and creamy. That's exactly what we want. And by the way, guys, if you're using regular sugar, totally fine. Just substitute out the white sugar for the monk fruit and treat it exactly the same. No substitutions other than just 1 for 1, okay? So now we're going to set that aside, and we're going to get ready with our flour and salt. Okay, our sifter. Now, here's the thing. With this recipe, the only thing about it, you see I'm adding my salt into my flour, all right? So the thing about this kind of a cake, it's not difficult. It's really not. Don't be intimidated by it, okay? A lot of people go, ah, a sponge cake? Isn't that like angel food cake? Oh, I can't make one of those. Well, you can. You absolutely can. All it takes is a little bit of ahead of time, prepare, in your mind what you're going to do and have your little areas ready, right? And that, I'm telling you from experience, that takes at least half the work out of it right there if you will do that ahead of time. Okay, so this flour has already been sifted, and I just use all-purpose. I don't use the cake flours and stuff like that. The cake flours are so bleached and so refined, that I don't know, several years ago, I just felt like I just couldn't do it anymore because I didn't want that bleached and refined stuff in what I was making for my family. So I just quit buying it. So if you come across a recipe that calls for cake flour, the old standby is for every cup of cake flour, you reduce your all-purpose flour by 2 tablespoons. So 2 tablespoons less per cup if you're using standard all-purpose flour, which I am. So then, after you do that, on this recipe, I've already sifted this once, okay? So now I'm going to sift it again with the salt added into it. And this is going to help us to achieve that really, really light texture that we want for our sponge cake. Okay, all right, now we have our flour and salt sifted together. All right, so look at these beautiful glossy peaks. So gorgeous, looks like snow. Look at that, doesn't that look like snow? So pretty. All right, so we're gonna take half of our whites and fold it into our yolks. Okay, so when it's mostly incorporated like that, we're gonna add the rest of our whites. Right, and then we're just gonna continue that folding process. Hopefully I won't stir it out again. I love this, it's like clouds, it's like stirring clouds. It's so fun. All right, we are almost done with this stage. That really, when you first start, you know how when you first start folding those whites into those yolks, you're thinking to yourself, oh my word, this is gonna take all day. But it really doesn't. It goes so much quicker. Because I always do that. I start into this process and I think, oh wow, this is gonna take a long time. But it doesn't. It goes quicker than you think it does. And if you've really got your eggs at that beautiful room temperature level, that's such the key right there. Okay, now almost all of those whites are incorporated. So now, we're gonna, I always do it that way when I do an angel food cake, you guys. I really like that light method of adding the flour. And you can see, you guys, as we add that flour, you can see it beginning to take that form. It's thickening up for us. Okay, that part is ready. Let's get our pan. Hey guys, we have our parchment lined pan. Now for this, and you'll see why when we put this together, instead of using round cake pans, I'm using just a baking sheet that has got parchment on it. And we're going to take this and spread it out nice and thin on here. And if you guys don't have an offset spatula, just use your regular. Just use one of these, no problem. But if you can invest in one of those or get one as a gift, whatever, you know I'm one of those kind of people that I enjoy getting a blender for Christmas. I'm that person, yes. I love useful things, especially when it's things that are on my list of needs. Okay, I'm gonna spread that out and even it. I don't need to go all the way to the very edges because I'm looking for about an inch on my finished thickness on this. I'm hoping for about an inch thickness. And that's looking pretty even. All right, and that's going to go in a 350 oven for about 30 to 40 minutes. And with a sponge cake, you make sure that you don't open that oven to check it too soon. So you want to be sure it's getting pale golden on the top and hitting about the 30-minute mark before you open the door. Okay guys, our sponge has come out of the oven and has been cooled completely. So our next step is going to be, we're going to pull this out and we're going to cut it. And what I want to do is I just want to kind of cut this into large rectangle type shapes. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to spray it and then we'll go crossways the other way and cut it some more. All right, so for what we're going to spray this with, we need about a tablespoon of agave because our champagne that we are using, we're not splurging on the $50 stuff for this application. All right. Now, all right, and we're just going to combine that because we want the champagne flavor, right? But we want it a little bit sweet, so it's kind of acting like a simple syrup, like you would make a simple syrup or some kind of a glaze to treat your sponge on for your cake layers, right? Same idea, same exact idea. All right, now this is going to go into my dedicated sprayer bottle. And we don't need a lot. We're going to spray this down. Give it a good soak. By the way, guys, if you want to make this, but you don't have the time to do the whole genoise, your whole sponge cake and everything, you can do it with pre-made lady fingers. Just get a really good brand, a really good quality lady finger. Lay them out on your parchment paper like this and go to it with exactly what I've done here. Just don't over soak them because they're more porous than a homemade sponge cake would be. All right, now we're going to let this set and soak up that champagne. All right, after it has soaked up that champagne a little bit, we're going to come back in and then cut them the other way. Okay, because they'll be softer by then with all that good champagne all inside them. Yum. Okay, let's let that set for about 10 minutes. Okay guys, now we have finished cutting our sponge cake and spraying with the remainder of our champagne and agave. And that has soaked that all in, so we are ready to assemble. So we have our trifle dish. By the way, you can get these at Walmart or wherever you can get them online, blah, 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 I'm sure. So the sponge cake, we're going to do 2 layers in total. So about half of our sponge cake is going to go in, and you just layer that through in the bottom. Depending on how many layers you want to do. If you want to do 3 layers, go for it. I may end up doing that because this is filling up my pan more than I thought it would. Wonderful. I mean my dish, not my pan. Okay, next thing to go in is our homemade raspberry preserve. Now here's the thing about a trifle. In order to show the layers, you've got to make sure that you get some of that against the side. Okay? All right, a little bit of that. All right, then we go in with our cream. Oh, and by the way, guys, if you haven't seen my video on how to make homemade whipped cream, and it is so easy, just be sure and check that out. I'll link that for you, in fact. Okay, so super easy to find. Then after the cream, we go in with our layer of fresh raspberries. I love the combo of that, the raspberry preserve and then the fresh raspberry, because you get that nice mouthfeel with the fresh raspberry, right? And you get all that flavor from the raspberry preserve. All right. Then we're going to come in with another layer of our sponge. And you kind of want to eyeball, as you're going, just kind of eyeball how it's looking from the outside. One thing about trifles, and I guess I should tell you the way they came about, was it was a way to use leftover sponge cake that wasn't super, super fresh. It wasn't at its freshest peak, right? So it was really kind of one of those things, kind of like some of these wonderful recipes that we've had over the years. They just came by from out of accident almost, you know. Kind of like French toast. You know, French toast came about that way. It was a way to use leftover stale bread. Back in the days when they didn't have the ways to preserve things like we do now, that was a big deal. This homemade raspberry preserve is so easy to make. You can do this. You can do this when you've got just some extra time in the kitchen. It's so lovely. And even hopefully I will remember to link that for you as well. And guys, if you want to make this, but you just absolutely don't have time to make the homemade raspberry preserve, and you're using the lady fingers already anyway, just get your favorite jarred red raspberry preserve. You just may need to loosen it with a little bit of that champagne. There we go. One of the fun things, you guys, about a trifle, like I was telling you earlier, they were born out of, what can I do with this leftover sponge cake, right? But one of the things that I love is that they're not meant to look absolutely perfect, right? They're not supposed to look like that. They're supposed to be this beautiful layering of all of these different components. And they come together in just this wonderful, wonderful way. And I don't know, there's just something about using something that would have normally been discarded that I really, really love. Okay guys, now remember that you have set this in the fridge for at least about 4 hours is good. If you want to do it overnight, that's fine too, but it needs a few hours in the fridge for the sponge cake to soak up all of the juices from the raspberry preserve and finish soaking up that champagne and all of that. But now that we've done that, it's time for a taste test. Oh, yum. Oh, yeah. Oh, the tartness of those raspberries, you guys, and that fresh raspberry preserve with the whipped cream and that sponge, that beautiful pale sponge that is not overly flavored, so that you just get that wonderful pale, it's almost like a pale flavor. I don't know how else to describe it other than it's so light, you know, it's so light on the palate. And that's what you want in something like this, so that all of those flavors come together and just sing, right? Well, I tell you what, if you guys enjoy seeing stuff like this, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Give us a like and a comment. We love hearing from you guys. And that helps us out so much. And here's to 2022 being even better than 2021. I think we might all be ready for that, right? Well, cheers to you and your family and all those you love. And we'll see you next time on Things Tina Does.